Hey all, welcome back to the SWU Report. This should be episode 8, if I'm counting correctly. You might have noticed a little bit of a gap here. I've never sworn that this would be a weekly show, and Alex and I didn't wind up matching up last week, so here we are again. But thanks for joining us as usual. At this point, I'm going to throw out all that fun stuff at the top of the show. Please like, subscribe, throw us a couple bucks on coffee. You can find it on the SWU.report website, that sort of thing. Again, not looking to make any money, just looking to cover, server costs, software costs, that sort of thing. So, yeah, other than that, subscribing to the channels, liking our stuff, that just, hypes our egos up and keeps us coming back again and again. So, that's important. So you can listen to me talk instead of just me listening to me talk.
Right. I mean, this is the reason, Will keeps on inviting me back, is apparently someone likes to listen to me talk with you. So I don't know if it's my ego or your ego we're helping here.
At least one person, and that's someone that went out of their way to message me. So that's pretty good. We don't actively hear from folks all that often.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're just, doing the millennial white dude thing of putting our voices out there in the internet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What, speaking of millennial white dude things, man, I am repping my mid 2000s pop punk type stuff at the moment. I guess new metal, Linkin Park, and just went to a Simple Plan concert last weekend.
Oh, nice.
Weekend before, whatever it is. So I've got my I'm Just a Kid scratched out, says adult, backside says and life is a nightmare. So good times, great concert.
I mean, that's much more exciting than mine's technically a work shirt. This is just a Stone Meyer shirt. So
nice. Hey, that's worth repping for sure.
If you get to work in games, you might as well enjoy it.
Oh boy, you better. You better. Otherwise, boy, I don't know if that grind is worth it, man.
I mean, at the end of the day, what you and I do isn't exactly the same, but it's still spreadsheets. A lot of what I do is spreadsheets. It's not actually like doing games, right? It's spreadsheets about games. How many boxes of this game do I move as opposed to how many boxes of this toothbrush I move? I don't know.
Yeah, right. I mean, I could be argued you're just playing a really high level, upper scale worker placement sim kind of.
Oh, absolutely. My job is I am playing a heavy Euro game that's just incredibly slow moving.
Yeah.
However, it does get to have some cooperative negotiation elements in it, which I really enjoy.
Ooh, nice. That's fun. That's fun. No, direct ways to attack other players, though. Right?
Oh, absolutely not. No. But getting to have all these other, game publishers and also the distributors I work with, and one slight tangent, but one cool thing about dealing with board games as opposed to TCGs is that no board game, and therefore no board game company, is a lifestyle hobby unto themselves.
Tell that to Catan.
Well, sure, but some people who are very casual gamers, maybe they only play Catan because that's what they know. But generally, people who are serious about board games, they're going to play Wingspan, and they're going to play. Maybe they won't play Catan because it's too old and not cool enough. But they're trying out whatever the new hotness is, and essentially, when another game company has another game that does well, not only can I be a fan of that game, but also I can be excited because they are probably introducing gaming to more new people. And there is some truth to that within TCGs, but with TCGs, it's hard to be very serious about SWU and Magic and Pokemon and One Piece, et cetera, right? it's so much more expensive and takes so much more time by itself.
Yeah, the time buy-in to keep up with things
Mm-hmm.
is so huge.
Yeah.
There's just not the same sort of meta pressures in most board games, as
Mm-hmm.
far as play styles being refined and countering each other and stuff. I guess, but one of the benefits of the fixed component pool for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong. I have met people who have played thousands of games of Wingspan, and that is their hobby is just Wingspan. But that's not your average board gamer.
Fair.
So it gets to be a little bit more of a cooperative game of me encouraging other publishers encouraging us, things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of hate to say it, and now some of the conversation has kind of drifted by it, but I do have to be honest that a little bit ago you put the nugget of an idea uh, in my head about attempting to design a I want to say food chain magnate esque, but
Hmm.
I'm aware there's a certain level of perfection to that I can't touch, but something like that, subbing in that you are running a tabletop uh, publisher.
Hmm.
Maybe add some interaction with the other players. Let's I don't know, Ameritrash it up a little bit more. Maybe
Hmm.
some corporate espionage, sneak into each other's, I don't know, warehouses to raid their great upcoming release before before the in-game convention debut gets there. Like, I I'm not gonna lie, this could be pretty fun now that I'm thinking about it.
I mean, there is definitely a space for that, especially if you can. There was at Gen Con this year. There was a game that came out called The Game Makers, and it's you're the factory making a bunch of games.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and all the games that you're making is like here's a game contract and it's a card, but all of the games are real published games. Um,
Oh, even cooler.
yeah, so people got excited about now I can be I can manufacture terraforming Mars and Wingspan. Um, so I think there's some potential, like people like gamers like having things that reference games.
Hmm.
So it's not going to be a mass market product, but sure, why not?
Yeah, not everything needs to be right.
Right. Besides, you
Yeah.
can have references like be the person who tries to steal a pallet of magic cards off the Gen Con floor.
Oh my goodness, yes, yes. All of that kind of stuff sounds
Hmm.
fantastic. Dang it! I need another brain bug sitting back there, compelling me to do things instead of like productive work. Thanks, Alex.
I do what I can.
Oh man, honestly, that
Hmm.
also makes me think about dusting back off an old design about actually about podcast hosts
Hmm.
competing against each other in a little card game, not TCG style, like
Hmm.
fixed box, but anyway, we had a lot of fun playing that amongst ourselves
Hmm.
years ago. So anyway, this is definitely the sort of thing that our listeners have tuned in to check out. I am sure.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, we're allowed to have a banter section at the start of the video, right?
That's true. That's true. And honestly, maybe at some point we should bring in a props and slops section.
Mm.
Used to do that at the end of the White Book back in the day, and let all the hosts give a couple kind of pop culture, movies, books, TV
Hmm.
shows, that type of thing, prop or slop to something they had seen or done lately. And I have actually had people ask when that segment is going to return. So we'll see. Speaking actually of returning segments, There is another one that we started even further back when the Game of Thrones show was still called Two Champs and a Chump. Started a segment called Berlitha. Ban, errata, restrict, or leave it the hell alone.
Ooh.
Which led to some fun hypothetical discussions,
Hmm.
and I think segues pretty nicely into one of the topics we were actually going to be talking about.
Hmm.
For any of the viewers watching here on YouTube, you have been able to see the Star Wars Unlimited meta check-in kind of graphic sitting here waiting on us to talk about it. So we've got an announcement of some kind coming up on Monday outside the kind of regularly scheduled process. What do you think, Alex?
Well, given what they've historically done, if we look at the timing of it, it's after a pair of sectors, but we have a couple of week gap before what is it? Dallas would be the next one after that. So
Yeah.
so there is the two sectors, the one that's just happened, the one that's happening this weekend, um, and then we're gonna have a couple of week gap. So if they're going to make a change, this is the time they would do it. That matches almost perfectly with the timeline that they suspended Django Fett. So they are clearly at least going to talk about it. It is possible that they will make an 11th hour decision after this weekend. So it's possible FFG doesn't know what they're going to do or not. Maybe they are still hoping something will come in and just make the CAD meta suddenly not matter anymore. But it does seem likely that at least something will get suspended, whether it is Cad Bane himself, whether it is some other blue red villainy cards. We've seen them go both routes in the past. Um, but it seems unlikely that they're going to have the meta check in and just say, this is a thing, but we're not making any changes.
Yes, agreed. That seems very unlikely. I know um, without going too far down this road, I know a lot of kind of old hands in kind of the FFG gaming realm like to give them crap for if there's a decision to be made, it will probably be the wrong kind of implication. But I don't think that they would um, cause the awkwardness of scheduling an out of sync check in and then saying, but by the way, we're not going to do anything. Not
Mhm.
that I'm saying you're arguing that. I'm just saying, oh, thank goodness, I don't think that will happen.
It seems unlikely, right? um, I mean, they have done check ins in the past where they have then said, we're not making a change. But um,
But those
yeah,
were regularly scheduled, I thought, right?
correct. I
Yeah.
believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the obvious thing for them to do is to suspend Cad Bane. Um, it's I think there is an interesting element when we look at that compared to, I mean, when we look at that compared to Django Fett. Django Fett was a higher percentage of the meta, and there was very little that was successfully countering Django. Versus here we see Cad Bane, what the sectors last weekend was 5 out of the top 8,
Yeah.
but did not win. Um, and that seems similar to what we saw at Galactics as well, that Cad was not winning every single match, but anything that was kind of present was a counter to Cad in some sense.
I it's trying, right? I think
Mhm.
that's one of the things for anybody that's been following my weekly kind of PQ meta update articles.
Mhm.
I've been a little conservative as far as calling for um, bans or suspensions or saying that CAD was a problem. Right?
Mhm.
There were a couple of metrics that I was kind of keeping my eye on that I hoped would start to cool for Cad. There were some initial um, indications, particularly that his top eight to win APR would had a little wiggle in it. Like it dropped slightly, and I was like, oh, maybe this is going to be kind of the beginning of things.
Hmm.
And as you said, he, despite five in the top eight at Berlin, did not manage to take it down. The unfortunate thing is virtually every other metric that I've been taking a look at continues to climb for
Hmm.
CAD. And I have come around to officially saying, hey, he seems to be warping things. This looks like a problem. His field share continues to rise. His field to top eight APR continues to rise. His field weighted matchup, so his win rate based on what else he expects to see, continues to
Hmm.
go up. Um, in fact, the Mandalorian Colossus, which wound up, taking things down in Berlin, folks were touting early as a counter to him. But and obviously it did work, in that place on that day, right? But if we look in the aggregate at win rates, it's actually just below a coin flip right now. It's 49 and change. I forget without flipping back. I've got it written up somewhere here in the article. Uh, let's see. Lando previously was looking pretty good at almost 55% into CAD.
Hmm.
Now he's down to about 47, 46.9,
Hmm.
that type of thing. So, like, the indications to me are
Hmm.
not cooling for CAD like I hoped. So I
Hmm.
really don't expect that trajectory to change in
Hmm.
Indianapolis.
That makes sense to me. The question I have looking at all of this is how much is it CAD and how much of it is blue red villainy, especially blue villainy, right? Is it blue red villainy, but CAD happens to be the strongest blue red villainy leader, which could also be a problem. If he is stronger than any other blue red villainy leader, so no one's playing. I know people are playing Daedra Colossus, but as a whole, if no one else is playing like a different blue red villainy leader because CAD is better, but also that deck is just so strong in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some evidence for that is, for example, that the Mandalorian Colossus that did win was playing both Pre Vizsla and Chimera despite the aspect penalty.
Yes, and very nearly half the
Mhm.
whole field, was running those cards.
Mhm.
The other one in that range was aggressive negotiations, which I think the
Mhm.
chatter about has really dropped off lately.
Mhm.
But it's worth acknowledging that it was up
Mhm.
there as well.
Yeah, we actually had a card reveal today, right? That is, each player discards all but three cards in their hand for a
Hmm.
two cost.
Yeah.
Uh, and I saw the chatter online of being like, oh, look, it's a Mando Colossus counter. But in a lot of ways, it's a aggressive negotiations counter.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
because having card advantage is useful, but without a specific card like aggressive negotiations or the hammerhead, um, it is not quite as oppressive to have a card advantage.
Agreed. Agreed. And for what it's worth, if it is at least in a kind of softer sense, a Mando Colossus attack or counter, I
Mm-hmm.
think that probably applies to Dedra as well, which I think most folks would consider the leading candidate after CAD
Mm-hmm.
if CAD were to be suspended.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think there is a likelihood, if CAD is suspended, do you think there's a likelihood that they will take another step and suspend Chimera or Previsla or anything else?
You know, maybe. It's an interesting question, and I'm gonna before getting to that, I'm gonna rewind slightly
Mm-hmm.
in order to examine how I get to the response that I want to make. So we can dig further into this uh, in a bit, but in this week's article and in an update to the Meta Dashboard on SWU Report, I've added a new metric, bounty rating. Short story here is I found out about Vicious Syndicate, which tracks stats for Hearthstone, and I got excited. Oh, that's another card game, and somebody's really crunching some numbers, blah blah blah. What can I steal from that? So um, this is kind of a slightly reworked version of their meta score. And essentially, it takes whatever the top deck is in the meta and pegs that as 100% in a few different categories or lenses, and then measures kind of backward where other decks are in relation to that. So it's not good at comparing, say, we were trying to use this to compare current Cad Bane to like uh, Django whenever he got suspended, right? Comparing
Mm-hmm.
those two head to head this way does not really work because it's current time period, current top deck anchors it, right? But how this connects then to your question about the other potentially problematic, at least in discussion cards, right? Chimera, Previsla, even to some extent, folks have mentioned something like Ninth Sister, though I think that gets substantially less press lately. Um, is okay. So if you look at the most recent article here, I've got the current top five. Cad Bane Blue at number one, and with that rating anchored, it comes out to a 92.9 out of 100. Right. The next deck, number two, is Krennic Blue, with a substantial drop down to 65, basically 65 and a half. And Mando Colossus in fifth at about 58 and a half. And those are the only, well, sorry, I take that back. Lando Blue at 63 would also potentially be playing some of these out of off color, right? Off aspect.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there are three in the current top five, but that power gap is so wildly different between them. It's huge. It's so wide. I then
Mm-hmm.
also ran a hypothetical top five if you were to cut Cad out, so he's no longer anchoring things. Um, and if you do that, you still wind up with those other three decks that are potentially running those, right? Or that are in many cases, right? We could see that, for instance, the Mando that won Berlin. We can see that in the deck list. Um, However, the way the new rankings scale at that point leaves our top end with Lando Blue at 72 and a half. Um, and you still have Luke at 71 and a half, Krennic just below that type of thing. Um, so the power level suddenly tightens a lot, it looks like,
Mm-hmm.
between the top decks. And you don't see something like Dedra creep in, which assumedly the Dedra decks, there's a wide overlap between that and CAD. In theory, if those cards like Chimera and Previsla are really pushing that overperformance so much, I would expect the other decks in the current top five that are currently using those to spread further in that gap. And I would expect something like Dedra at least aspect wise, that's 100% overlap to potentially jump into kind of these top rankings.
Mhm.
But that doesn't happen, which leads me to believe that the leader himself is providing enough of an edge.
That makes sense. Just thinking about the decks from without the numbers in front of me, the difference I would say is that CAD is interacting much more in an something that is suppressing aggro decks. Looking at those top five, Dedra tends to be more of a control deck, which aggro decks usually are the ones that they can come in and defeat. And so maybe there's some sense where I see Ahsoka coming into the fifth place instead of Dedra, and that may be because CAD is suppressing Ahsoka.
That is possible, and in the paragraph right after that, it also notes that Vader then moves up to the number 6 spot with an overall rating
Mhm.
tied with Ahsoka. So there's another aggro that jumps up there, at least in the range of discussing.
Mhm. Do you think there are decks that this essentially this data is not going to capture? For example, the Ashes Sabine, who has a very interesting leader ability. However, that ability is kind of terrible into CAD.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think it changes things for decks like that, where suddenly these cards or these leaders are much more playable as soon as you remove CAD's leader ability from the picture?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I'm going to pop back over here to the meta dashboard, which for
Mhm.
folks looking at this in the video, it definitely looks a bit different than it did the last time we were in a video.
Mhm.
We'll come back to that at some point here, but I'm gonna pull up Sabine, right? So, okay, looks like we've got a Sabine Ash Yellow build that's seen a little bit of play here. Um, yeah. So okay. So here's the thing I wanted to look at in that I think gives us a starting point of theorizing. I mean, yes, in a kind of logical sense, right? CAD does 1 damage pings. Sabine plays shields. Pings are a great way to counter shields, right? That
Mhm.
logically tracks. But the thing I wanted to take a look at here, if I pull up Sabine's spotlight panel on the dashboard, we can see that her average match win rate right now, just flat average, is looking at about 70%. Now, I don't currently have this set up to show how large of a sample size that is. My guess is it's a bit smaller. Um,
Mhm.
but that's a pretty impressive average match win rate. Field weighted, on the other hand, drops way down to about 52. And we know that the largest chunk of the field right now is Cad Bane Blue, as we can see in the field share distribution, right?
Mhm.
So that means that he is a large chunk of what is driving down her win rate um, when we weight it for the field. So
Mhm.
if you know if something that she does poorly against is a big chunk of the field, then it pulls down that weighting down overall. So if something were to happen to him, I think that's really interesting and worth looking at. That her flat average looks very good right now,
Mhm.
and suddenly that starts making the field in general really open up for her.
Mhm. I think that's the sort of thing where, like, I feel like the statistics of just removing CAD doesn't account for where players are choosing not to play leaders because those leaders are just weaker in this specific field, right? So it gets
True.
harder to get that information.
Hmm. No, that's a great point. Well, let's see. Anything else from that thought process, either that hypothetical of what potentially moves up here, or further thoughts on what you personally would
Mhm.
look at doing. Just what's your I'll just put you on the spot here. What
Yeah.
is your personal kind of gut thought, not necessarily just number crunching, but what would
Mhm.
you do if you were in charge of a ban, errata, restriction, suspension, leave it the hell alone, whatever it might be, for
Mhm.
that kind of top handful of
Mhm.
cards?
Yeah, I think I definitely suspend Cad Bane. That's the easy one. It does feel like even if he's not winning as much as Django was, he is warping the meta. And frankly, the second half of this set will be more fun to play without him present, because it just opens up more options.
Yeah.
Um, Beyond that, I think I would leave it at just that. It does, like, if I'm thinking from my health of the game hat, it causes me some concern that pre and especially Chimera being played out of aspect. Um, but there are cases when there are incentives to play out of aspect, right? So, for example, I don't remember if that first place Mando does it, but you're playing Mando Colossus, you play a couple out of aspect villainy cards, and suddenly the Anakin set five Anakin looks that much better with the 2 -3 -3s
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So you have those extra incentives there. Similarly, I've enjoyed Leia Green as my set six Leia Green as my sort of fun low brain burn deck recently, which has some similarities to Ahsoka Blue, um, but aggressive negotiations is an obvious play in that deck because it actually lets you do the leader ability on pretty much any unit you have. So things like that, where it's like, oh yeah, that's not a big deal, or even less of a big deal. Um, so I'm not willing to say just playing it out of aspect is bad, but with the number of decks playing it out of aspect, it does give me some hesitation. Um, so yeah, I might suspend Chimera as well.
I can see the reasoning and the thought process there for sure, and I think I am in agreement about Cad himself
Hmm.
being um, being the target to go ahead and take out right now. I mean, it wasn't until I started crunching this new metric here for the bounty rating, but when I realized how huge of a gap that is between the number one deck
Hmm.
and the number two, or even three and four and five, um, I feel like that is such a wild gap that just can't stand,
Hmm.
um, and that it's probably only likely to get worse as the season goes on. And I can definitely see some arguments for Chimera and or Pre, especially at the play rates they were at in Berlin, nearly
Hmm.
50% of the field. Um, even some heroic decks here running this stuff is
Hmm.
concerning to me. But there's a particular bugbear I haven't talked much about on the show, but I did in articles, primarily last season. I haven't hit on it much this season since CAD has taken up so much discussion space. But um, in my mind, I've called the concept base compression is an issue that the game hasn't always been great with. Basically, certain bases squeezing out the playability of other stuff. And the most recent issues with that have been the higher HP bases. And so part of me thinks that if we get rid of CAD and we've already seen, like you and I were looking at before, that allows some of the aggro decks more breathing room here,
Mm-hmm.
and that a couple of the other kind of culprits playing those cards are much more at the control end, right? Mandalorian and Dedra, who also tend to play that high HP stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
Colossus, and offset that with their card draw. Chimera then is a huge tool to really solidify and stabilize uh, after you've had that extra, let's say, 5 health ish padding there,
Mm-hmm.
and really, keep the game out of reach for an aggro deck. Part of me thinks you go ahead and knock Cad and the older high HP bases, which in my mind have kind of proven problematic in multiple seasons now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make some of these decks relying on those high cost stabilization tools suddenly have a faster clock to
Mm-hmm.
deal with, and kind of see where that goes.
I mean, I personally don't hate that. You may have noticed when I just talked about my Leia deck, it's not Leia Data Vault. Technically, it should be Leia Data Vault from a win rate perspective, but I think
Mhm.
it's more fun to have a 50 card deck because
Yeah.
you hit certain card combos more often and things like that, even though in the current meta, the card combos don't matter as much as the health. Uh, so I would personally, I think, enjoy the game better with those bases gone. I'm excited for the next rotation for them to be gone. Um, I feel a little bit hesitant to say that they're having a meta warping effect. Um,
I,
and one thing maybe to think about on when talking about suspension list is, are cards making the game less fun for other decks as well?
mm-hmm.
So Django's ability was, so Bobo got banned because he was just essentially had a free experience token on him compared to the same cost of other leaders. Um, Django, I think, was actually more of an issue because his ability was oppressive. Just exhausting all your opponent's units all the time makes the game less fun.
Yeah.
Um, Similarly, Force Throw felt oppressively not fun, right? With a one cost to get rid of a card in their hand and defeat a unit. Um, and I think, in some sense, Cad Bane's doing the same thing, where he's making certain deck archetypes just unplayable and therefore not fun. And none of these other cards, when you talk about Data Vault or Colossus or Chimera, even, they're not making the other deck struggle to be able to play their own game. You have to overcome the extra health, you have to deal with the extra health in some form, but you're not keeping them from playing the game in the same sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's not, it doesn't feel like it is meta altering of the same scale, even if it is prolific.
That's fair, and I definitely would say they are less prolific than they were last season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but here's another consideration to float: uh, being that this is a TCG environment,
Mm-hmm.
to some extent, care for um, secondary market, or even just new like box value. What's the term for that? Like the expected, is it EV? Duh, yeah, expected value, right, on a box.
Mm-hmm.
I know, let's say, less worthwhile legendaries has been a
Mm-hmm.
complaint for at least a couple sets now. Some of these cards, like Chimera, previously even Ninth Sister, right, are
Mm-hmm.
pushing legendaries in what is currently the newest set release,
Mm-hmm.
versus the bases that I'm suggesting are rares in a much older release that, like you said, will rotate before long.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also a possible argument that um, ditching the bases as a kind of downline tool to try to soften the likely successors to CAD while preserving the much newer legendaries in the newest set um, might preserve, let's say, sales health, both
Mm-hmm.
first and second market, a little better.
Mm-hmm. I think that is a definitely worth considering. Yeah, there is, and this is, I think this is a complicated element that we don't talk about enough as maybe players in TCGs as a whole.
Yeah.
It is, if we like the game, if we want the game to keep on being printed, we want for it to have a healthy economic value. Even if we, in a short term, it might be like, oh, that's annoying. I have to pay $40 for a Previsla or whatever. Um, it's important that there are healthy sales of the sets in order for the game to continue. And so there is a complicated element there, right? Where it's, even if Chimera or Previsla are a little bit too powerful, if they're making the game continue, if the boxes are being sold, it's making FFG money, which means they will, which means it's making Asmodee money, which means the shareholders will then say, yes, we want you to keep on making this game. That is ultimately good for us and important for us in some form or another as well. Um, and I could go into an entire side tangent about Carbonite and why it's really important for that same reason, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
um, but yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Oh, wasn't expecting you to just go along with it that easily, Alex. You're so much more agreeable than some of my past co-hosts.
um, I don't know. I think it's a very holistic argument. It's a aftermarket Colossus is like 25 cents. An
Mhm.
aftermarket Previsla is $40, right? There's a big difference there. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Um, well, thanks for joining me on that journey. I know we said we were shooting for something in the half hour range, and I know we're already over 40 minutes now for this episode. So go figure, we can have good discussions. But I know there were at least two other things we wanted to quickly hit
Mhm.
on. So these are probably going to be fast. I know one of them I've already got pulled up here, so I'm going to forcefully transition us to a new topic if you don't mind too
Perfect.
much.
No, please do. Just remember, we normally say we're going to do an hour, and we end up somewhere an hour and a half. So we're actually right on track. We're doing half as much time.
That's
So,
true. That's true. Yeah, we are right on target for our discussion inflation. So, the other thing I wanted to talk about, I've shown briefly here in the article as we've, or sorry, in the episode as we've gone, which is the latest version of the Meta Dashboard on SWU Report. Um, so um, the dashboard here has gone through a variety of updates over the past couple weeks. Most of these are relatively small, kind of quality of life stuff. So previously, you could search up any two archetypes here at the top of the page to compare them, and you were able to click individually on a variety of decks, anything that had made kind of the top 20 we were watching, to look at a spotlight panel on just that deck. Right, so here's, I pulled the spotlight on Piet Blue, it looks like, or for example's sake, we can compare Cad Blue versus, how about Vader JTL Yellow, and there you get your head-to-head comparison on them. So now we've pulled up the look up any deck, not just those that are already within the top 20. So you can grab, let's say, Thrawn Data Vault. Now That's not one I've seen or heard much about. So there we go. We can grab a spotlight on anything we're tracking at the moment, and you can see a breakdown. Along with that quality of life, you'll also see some of the charts have been redone, and the tooltips for everything basically have been redone. Not all the charts were using the same numbers, or sorry, the same colors across the board. So you may wind up with, let's say, Cad Bane blue here in the APR trend line in orange, and say down here in the event win donut chart, he might have been blue, just for example's sake. That has now been standardized across all of them, so they should be the same. We've also added the little colored dots next to the name, which should show up essentially everywhere, that now show the aspect colors for that deck. You'll also see the name bar around all of them, which also includes an S through D rating next to them. That is specifically off of their combined APR, so their combined performance rate. The tiers are written here. So that shows up essentially everywhere as well that you're looking. Again, we're looking at a lot of data here. You can slice it lots of different ways to decide how to rank the decks. So, for instance, if you were to look at the very top of the page now to the brand new bounty board, you'll notice it's not all in a neat little S down to D order like the APR listing was we were just looking at. So, depending on how you want to slice it, things can be a little different. But this is the new metric that I was talking about that's been adapted from Vicious Syndicate. Again, it just takes whatever the top deck is in these individual categories. So power is the win rate. Frequency is the field size or share, right? Then it's stage one APR, so that's field into top eight, and then the stage two APR, so that's top eight to win the event, and then essentially measures backward from that for where every other deck is. So you'll even notice actually Cad Bane is 100% in the first three. But like I said earlier, hey, his winning performance has actually gone down some. Lando Blue actually has the best top eight to win performance right now. So you'll see his 100 there. So that breaks down the categories, and then you can just average those out, just flat average, to get the bounty rating for them. And much like essentially everywhere else, you can click on any individual one to get the spotlight panel. You'll see the color coding has all carried over, the bounty rating there, the combined APR, and all of these various stats that I like to bring up. So yeah, that's me rambling longer even than I meant to for a really fast transition through this, but there you have it. I will say my favorite chart here, the population versus performance. I know when Alex and I looked at this before, there was a real neat little triangle pattern at the time of, I believe it was Vader yellow, Boba JTL, and Ahsoka blue, kind of in this range, kind of chasing Cad. But you'll definitely see they have begun to spread out here as the season goes. So.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. That's the quick update to the dashboard. I think it should be much more usable for folks. And yeah, happy researching, everybody.
Yeah. Well, did we want to briefly touch on the fact that the judge program there is news, but there is not news?
Yeah, the judge program is no more, essentially, right? Or at least
Right.
will be. What was it? The end of October?
Mm-hmm. there will be a transition, but we don't know what it's transitioning to yet. Essentially,
Yeah, yeah. It felt like an awkward announcement. I'll
mm-hmm.
admit. I don't follow sitting in on all the various live streams and such like some folks do. Did I hear correctly that Cascade had actually announced that they and FFG were parting ways before FFG did, and some of the announcement timing maybe got the hand got forced a little bit because of that?
I think that's probably true. I don't know all the. I didn't look too deeply into it. Just knowing that, seeing that it was happening, that there was this transition happening. It was a little bit, maybe a little bit messy.
Yeah.
We don't know. Obviously, we don't know anything anyone else does as far as like backroom dealings of who's talking to who and who upset who or what happened or all those things. It's easy to speculate, but at the end of the day, it's changing, and we'll find out how.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I certainly don't want to insinuate that it was down to just kind of personal politics of upsetting
Mhm.
this person or the other. I mean, if I again, I have zero knowledge. Good lord, the folks I knew, there's barely anyone left working at FFG that I could pump for information. But I'm assuming that it was some sort of contract was due for renewal and some kind of terms in negotiations.
Mhm.
You know, probably monetary, right? Just
Right.
didn't work out for both halves of that transaction. But I will say, I mean, hopefully we've got something new planned coming up that they're going to announce. I wish there had been an announcement at the same time. I think that would have softened the blow for the community a lot. If
Mhm.
there could have been kind of that 1-2 punch of, hey, the program with Cascade is ending, but stay tuned for, I don't know,
Yeah.
September 30th when we announce, the details on the new plan. Even
Mhm.
something as basic as a specific time frame like that, I think would have gone a long way, but we're kind of in
Yeah.
limbo.
When you put it that way, that actually reminds me of when I see friends get new jobs, and there's
Mm-hmm.
always the Facebook post of, I'm moving on to a new thing. Everything's okay between me and old company, but I'm moving on. I'm not talking about the new thing now. I'm talking about the old thing. Stay tuned for the new thing later, right? It has that kind of vibe where it's like there's that instinct to be like, what's the drama? What's going on?
Yeah.
But it's oftentimes just that for one reason or another, they're not allowed to announce the new thing for a few more weeks or something.
Right, right. I mean, and especially when you put it on the more kind of personal comparison like that, there's a certain level of, um, gosh, I don't know, decorum maybe is what I want to boil it down to, as far as
Mhm.
not getting too far out into the weeds. But I definitely agree with you that a lot of kind of third party folks, us watching those type of announcements, do jump to that conclusion real fast that there has to have been some kind of tea, right?
Right.
But more often than not, it's really mundane.
Mhm. I mean, we didn't jump to that about the Venetian, right? That Galactics is moving to Disneyland next year, and regardless of how you feel about that, I didn't hear anyone saying, "Oh, there was some drama falling out between FFG and the Venetian."
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. It was, I think, all the negativity I saw was focused on the awkwardness for them personally of the new time in the
Hmm.
calendar.
Right.
So yeah, but I mean that's gamers, that's humans in general, right? We're
Mhm.
we're always excited to talk about the negative impact to ourselves or those around us much faster than the positive. So
I'm looking forward to all of the angry messages you get about the change to the dashboard, and everyone hates change, right?
yeah, yeah. Boy, if anybody actually messages me about the change to the dashboard, frankly, I will just be excited about that. I mean, I can see in the server stats that it's like the, I don't know, third most visited page on the site or something like that, behind whatever the two most recent articles are at any given moment. So I know there's people using it,
Mhm.
but I don't wind up getting much feedback or anything about it. But hey, it entertains me. I feel like it's useful for me to use and talk about. So I'm gonna keep doing it.
So you heard it here. If you were enjoying this content, like, subscribe, send $2 on coffee, and send Will a message about how you feel about the dashboard.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be great. Or, really, if this got to the point that, any other content creators were interested in using it or talking about it on their show, that also would be awesome. I feel like I now that I said that, I should clarify. I know the planning phase syndicate guys did do an episode where they talked about the pre-galactics numbers that I pulled that you and I talked about before. But I mean, that was just spreadsheets and all. Maybe
Mhm.
I'll consider, linking that up on the website somehow for next year or something. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean the dashboard is sure prettier than Excel is, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
All right. Well, we are at what about 55 minutes raw time right now, so I think we've sure hit even our extra padding for the episode. So, thanks for joining us on this adventure. Particularly Alex, thanks for coming along for the ride. Anything else you've got before we part?
No, I think it's good. I hope everyone enjoys their final weekend with Cad Bane, question mark, um, over in Indy.
Yeah. Good luck, everybody, especially anyone that is actively out there competing this weekend.
Mhm.
And may the force be with you.
And with you.